Hello and welcome to EU Brexit, how it affects expat property and business. This webinar, this video, is a follow-up to our recent live webinars every last Thursday of the month, where we cover EU Brexit for expats, living and working abroad, for family and business, to cover all issues of health and welfare. Some of the issues that we're looking at is this month was if you live abroad and you've got family members with you, how are health services affected? If you're working, what rights do you get in terms of social insurance and the right to stay and travel freely within the EU? And what might your UK NHS benefits look like if you're living and working in the EU? So all these things are issues that we want to look at in terms of EU Brexit for expats living and working abroad. For family and business, our website, partnership.com, is full of information, and you can register on there to follow our newsletters and get updates of our next webinars and our podcasts, which you can watch through iTunes or SoundCloud. As well as reading our informative articles on overseas property investment, living and working abroad, EU Brexit for expats, and tax saving expat experts. So before we get into the issues of how EU Brexit affects expat property and pensions, we look at the broader picture. There's a lot of politics going on at the moment that we need to consider, and what's that all about? We keep hearing this term about the customs union. Let's put it in perspective. The UK have had a democratic vote that they want to leave the EU arrangement. Italy recently have had an election where they wanted to distance themselves a bit from the EU, and the EU has reacted quite toughly, and the establishment has reacted against the democratic will of the Italian people to stifle that process. And we've also got a very hard-nosed EU bureaucracy, an unelected bureaucracy, playing hard-nosed with the UK, and there can be some detachment there, which is could be a danger for the EU in being not related to the will of the people, and this is all reflected in the customs union. Now the EU is a trading bloc. Every country in the world that trades with the EU has to have a customs agreement, and the EU has one customs agreement for all 28 member states, or 27 as it will be after Brexit. So that is its role. Okay, now it's got a customs agreement with the UK. It could keep the same agreement, but it's choosing not to. It's choosing to go through a different process before it gets there. All that's been agreed at the moment is that during the transition period after Brexit, from March 2019 to December the 31st, 2020, everything will stay the same. And at the end of that transition period, the UK will negotiate other trade agreements with other countries, and that should allow the status quo to continue. We will see. But all this noise about the customs union, whether it's the same or different, it is largely irrelevant. The UK can trade under World Trade Organization rules with the EU or any other country. The UK, to trade with the EU, has to agree with the EU how it can trade with the 27 member states, and so that's how it will be. There's no picking off individual countries. As far as the UK goes, they have to negotiate with the EU, but also the EU have to accept that they've already got a customs union, and there's no reason why they can't retain one afterwards. The French have border police, the Channel Tunnel in St Pancras in London. The British have border police in Brussels for the Channel Tunnel as well, the Eurostar train, as well as British police in France. The Spanish want to have Spanish customs people going into Gibraltar Airport to manage the customs border there, so that the land border between Spain and Gibraltar can stay free. Northern Ireland is seen as a sticking issue, but there was no hard border before the EU came along. There was free movement between Cyprus and the UK, and people just got on with it. And there's another big issue for the EU as well, is in Cyprus there's 20,000 Cypriots living and working on the UK sovereign basis as Akrotiri, and how will their rights be protected post-Brexit? There need to be a bilateral treatment there. But any expat living and working in Cyprus will know that before Cyprus joined the EU, there's free movement between Cyprus and the British area, and the reverse roles now with the UK out of the EU and Cyprus in it should make little difference. So we can see how that will work out. So I want to quickly summarise our webinar this week. If you want to live and work abroad, if you're an EU expat in the UK or UK expat in Cyprus, then you need to be legally resident before Brexit takes place on the 29th of March next year. If you do that, your rights won't change afterwards. But beyond the end of the transition period in December 2020, there is uncertainty. And you can end that depending upon your circumstance. So a permanent residency option for EU citizens allows a 10-year unlimited visa travel between your home country and your EU country of residence. So a British expat could have a permanent residency based on Cyprus, which means they can move freely between Cyprus and the UK for 10 years afterwards. There's also the option of dual citizenship. Once you're qualified, the permanent residency will give you the right to stay without further verification and give you time to qualify in terms of years for a dual residency passport. Anybody who has an Irish or a Cypriot or a British or any other country's dual passport, you can't get dual citizenship for Holland, Germany or Austria. But if you've got dual citizenship, then that means that you can live and work and travel freely around the EU. So this is quite an attractive option for not just EU expats, but third country expats from China, Russia, India, Jordan, that can come to Cyprus, invest in property and business, and get an EU passport. If you've got a Cypriot passport, then you're free to travel throughout the EU. If you've got a British passport as well, then you've got a right to enter the UK. An EU expat in the UK acquiring settled status and a passport has got the right to remain in the UK and travel freely to Scotland, Wales, United Kingdom and England. So there's advantages to that, and Cyprus has got a very low level of income qualification for residency. Somewhere like the UK is much higher, especially for third parties. So protect yourself in the long term by taking short-term action to be legally registered, living and working abroad. Consider if permanent residency would suit your family's needs now, and is dual citizenship something that would support your family and business. There's a new double taxation treaty between Cyprus and the UK. This is causing some anxiety, but actually it's meant to strengthen the ties between the two countries. Social insurance, medical and taxation treaties are not the remit of the Cyprus, of the EU government. They're beyond that. And social insurance treaties existed between UK and Cyprus before Brexit, and they'll exist afterwards. Same with medical care. So an expat living and working, a British expat living and working in Cyprus, or a Cyprus expat living and working in the UK, will still be able to enjoy a transfer of social insurance benefits and welfares and pension and medical care. The two aren't necessarily the same, but the rights can be transferred. You have to live and work in Cyprus for 3 years before you qualify for benefits. You have to live and work in the UK for 6 months before you can start qualifying. Even so, at the moment, third-party nationals have to pay for family members while working in the UK. They have to pay for family members $200 a month for each person for national health cover. So that can be avoided with dual citizenship. It can give you extra rights to be treated as a local rather than as a foreigner. So something to consider depending on what your lifestyle is. The double taxation treaty brings in changes so that there's no tax on withholding taxes on savings, investments, royalties or dividends, or capital gains. So this is a big attraction and makes Cyprus and the UK attractive places for each other to invest in. The new rules have to be ratified, but from the 1st of January 2019, there'll be no withholding taxes, royalties or dividend taxes applied. From the 6th of April 2019, the start of the UK new tax year, income and taxes will be taxed under the new double taxation treaty. And from the 1st of April 2019, any business tax year that starts after that date will be taxed under the new regime for dividends, royalties, withholding taxes and savings taxes. So that can be a big tax saving for business and for families and for people that are renting property in the UK or in Cyprus. So that's 4 big dates in the first quarter of next year, the fourth being of course 29th of March when we have as Brexit date. There is one question mark on the new double taxation treaty in that the UK tend to follow up on similar agreements they've got elsewhere, where they're going to retain the right to tax public sector pensions in the UK. Now this could be a positive or a negative, and for an individual assessment you need to contact us, Private Partnership /contact-us, and we can enable you to give you an assessment and a tax calculation and what your position will be after the new double taxation treaty comes in play. Basically what the situation is that if you've got the right type of pensions in the right makeup, you could have £26,000 of UK pensions without paying any tax in Cyprus. At the moment it's £16,000. So for the right mix of pensions, you could be much better off in Cyprus and paying less tax. However, on the other hand, if you've got a large public service pension and that's your sole source of income, and it's over 50,000, you could be a high rate taxpayer in the UK. Now, you'd be a high rate taxpayer in Cyprus, so the overall tax take might not go up that much more. So the initial tax-free allowance in Cyprus is higher at around £16,000 in the UK, around £11,500, but the bands for the Cyprus are much shorter before they jump to 25, 30, 35% and beyond. So it's important to look at the calculation. It may be you're a winner, it may be you're a loser. Some people will pay more tax, but at UK rates up to 45% instead of paying pension rates at 5% in Cyprus, but other people could enjoy £27,000 of pension tax-free. So contact us at propartnership.com and we'll help you calculate and assess what is your best move going forward. Important thing under the new double taxation treaty is that capital gains is tax-free. If you've got a Cyprus International Trust and it owns shares in a business, and it could be a trading company or it could be owning property, then that trust could have capital gains tax-free, and it could have no tax in Cyprus. Not because there is no tax in Cyprus, it is taxed in Cyprus, but it's a nil rate of tax. So by owning assets in a trust, you can avoid capital gains for your business, for your property rental business, for your commercial property, for your holiday home, for your overseas property rental home. So this could be a big way of making big capital gains in the future and avoid that that tax liability that you would get by owning that as an individual or owning it through a company or an individual status in another tax residence. This works for families as well as business. So a family has a liability to inheritance tax. If you own £1 million of property in the UK and overseas property in Cyprus, France or Spain, then you've potentially got an inheritance tax liability of 40% in the UK. You can avoid that quite easily using a Cyprus trust. So if your property is owned by a company, you can get more tax relief on any mortgages, commercial mortgages against that rented property. You can avoid capital gains tax, you can avoid dividends and rental taxes and withholding taxes and royalties and avoid a capital gains tax. But also that gift into trust makes the property free of inheritance tax in the UK. All gifts to family in the UK are potentially free of inheritance tax after 7 years. But gifting to a Cyprus in Cyprus is free of capital gains anyway, and there's no inheritance tax in Cyprus, so it can be quite attractive. If you've got a company that owns a property, then the inheritance tax assessment is on the value of the shares of the company, not on the assets that the company owns. So it's a big way of administering your affairs, moving tax liability from a high tax jurisdiction to a low tax jurisdiction like Cyprus, even though your business could remain in the UK, but your property assets could remain in a Cyprus trust. And that way they're protected from probate, family divorce, family dementia, illness, care home fees, inheritance tax, probate fees, and ill health and managing those arrangements. So there's great benefits can be had using a Cyprus trust to protect family assets of property and business for family living and working abroad. Contact us, productpartnership.com, and we'll see how we can help. I hope you've enjoyed this living and working abroad video. I'm Proact Sam Orgill, and if you want to contact us, go to our website, productpartnership.com. You can register there as well for regular emails to keep you in touch with Brexit for expats living and working abroad, and our work as tax saving expat experts. We'd love to hear from you. You can also follow our podcast every Thursday on iTunes or SoundCloud. Any questions, leave a comments and we'll always try and answer those. We love working for our clients, we love providing service, and we've got guides and information in our blogs at productpartnership.com/blog. So we hope to see you there soon, and tune into our live monthly webinar on the last Thursday of each month, the next webinar being the 28th of June. Hope to see you there at 3 p.m. UK, 5 p.m. Cyprus time. Thank you very much.